Hi everyone, welcome back. It's Moa, aka Swedish Whiskey Girl, and today we're going to have a look at another travel retail whiskey, and that is of course our Highland Park Spirit of the Bear. I think this one is quite an interesting one at the moment because Highland Park have kind of reevaluated what they're going to do with their travel retail expressions. I think because there is quite a lot of them. This one here is part of a trio that was released in 2018, I believe, and it's a non-age statement whiskey that is bottled at 40% and that is been matured in sherry seasoned American oak casks, I believe. But because they've had quite a few non-age statements out there, and there's been a lot of special releases for different markets and for different like a little occasions, that there's almost been too many bottles out there, that I think they've gotten some critique that it's a little bit tricky to kind of tell them apart and also to tell what Highland Park is. So I think they've re-evaluated it and won't release any of these kind of non-age statement travel retail expressions or special releases for a while, but focus on what their core expression is, which to me sounds like a pretty good idea if they have received that critique about being a little bit all over the place. So this is of course one of the ones that have been available in travel retail, so I thought it would be fun to just give it a little try today. And as you can see, since it is travel retail, this whiskey also sits in a 1 litre bottle. And of course Highland Park is a distillery that sits on the island of Orkney, quite high up north here in Scotland, and it is one of those distilleries that belong to the Highlands, but I know some people like to categorise them as an island whiskey since it is located on an island. And of course Highland Park are quite proud of their Viking heritage, so this Spirit of the Bear is kind of an homage to that as well. And this particular one is because when they were preparing, when the Vikings were preparing for battle, they thought they could harness the power and strength of a bear by wrapping themselves in its skins. And of course these warriors became to be known as BÄRSÄRKers. And they're still saying in, for example, Swedish, that you can go BÄRSÄRK, so go berserk, which is a word that is kind of taken from the Old Norse words for bear and for skin. And the expression go berserk of course means to kind of go absolutely crazy, or yeah, that kind of, I could guess that if you went into a fight and you went totally crazy, that's kind of when you go berserk in Swedish, so that's where it comes from. But that's a bit of the story behind it. And with Highland Park and its traditions and its heritage, they often have this kind of element of storytelling to them and their whiskies. So let's start by having a look on the nose. It has quite a smoky, earthy note to it straight away. Like almost also spice, like quite gingery, like ginger smoke. Maybe a bit of licorice, like ginger licorice, like herby bonfire smoke. But also a little bit of citrus, like a mix between lemon and orange. And the more I nose it, the less the smoke kind of settles down a bit. Highland Park isn't known for being heavily peated, but they do sometimes have a little bit of a touch to it, so it's now just becoming more and more fruity. And the fruitiness feels quite dense, which I'm guessing is that kind of sherry influence. And you do get a little bit of that kind of sherry denseness coming through, and you can kind of tell, if you know what you're looking for, you can see that it's there in the edges. Quite orangey on the fruitiness. Like orange and licorice. But let's have a little taste. Sláinte Skål. Initially quite fresh and like quite easygoing. It is sitting at 40%, so it isn't overwhelmingly alcohol spicy. But it does have this kind of fresh fruitiness at first, and then you get a bit more of the earthiness and the kind of licorice smoke coming through. And there's definitely like a ginger spice there as well. The licorice isn't heavy and it isn't sticking to the palate, but it's just this kind of touch of it that makes the smokiness feel more herby, as well with that ginger influence. But the ginger isn't spicy. It's more just like when you have ginger ale or something and there's the flavor of it, but it's not like when you're eating ginger and it kind of really clings to your palate and it's quite powerful and spicy. The mouthfeel is pleasant because it's so fresh and clear and clean. The earthiness has a bit of funkiness to it. Could of course be that this bottle has been open for quite a long time, but the earthiness, because of the herby element, makes it a little bit funky and almost like mushroomy in a way, which I think some people might experience as a little bit odd or off. I kind of think it makes it interesting because it's something different going on. Because of course, I'm not against non-age statements whiskies, and I think they can be quite nice and quite fascinating because you don't really know what's in it, and it doesn't have to be that they're using the youngest whiskey possible to trick you in any way, but sometimes when you have a range that releases a lot of non-age statement whiskies, you don't really know what's the difference between one and another. So that this one has that kind of funky note as well, or the earthiness, just makes it a little bit more interesting and a little bit more like something I might remember later on, because I do try a lot of whiskies and a few of them, if you ask me about them, I can kind of remember generally if it's fruity or if it's smoky or if it's herby or citrus, but I can't remember exactly what they're like, and some of them just kind of disappear into this mid-ground where everything's a little bit similar. So I do think it's an interesting note, that kind of mushroomy funk. Yeah, but I'm trying to remember what I think of the 12. And I think this one has more of that kind of ginger spice and a little bit more of that earthy funk. But it's I still think it has a Highland Park character, that kind of honey notes coming through. It's that sweetness that is very clean and crisp and honeyed, which makes it feel soft, but it's not overly sweet, but it is a sweetness that goes really well with the kind of fruitiness and then has that kind of touch of the smoke and the herby note in the edges. I wouldn't say this whiskey is particularly robust, even though it has that influence of a little bit touch of the smoke and a little bit earthiness. But because of the fruitiness feeling so crisp and clean, and the honey notes making it so kind of smooth, this might be a really good one if you are, for example, someone starting with smoke, but that would be Highland Park 12 is a good one for that as well. But it doesn't, if you are someone who's looking for robust notes, this one's more smooth, I would say. And yeah, it doesn't pack a heavy punch of smoke, it's just there's a little kind of spice to it. So it's, yeah. I would of course be interested to hear what you think. Have you tried any Highland Park travel retail expressions? Have you tried Spirit of the Bear, or have you perhaps tried any other of the whiskies in this trio? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please put them in the comments here below. And of course, if you like what I'm doing here on YouTube and my other social channels, I'd be absolutely over the moon if you consider using my affiliate links the next time you're shopping with either Master Malt, the Whisky Exchange, or the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. All that information is of course in the description here below, as well as links to my website, my Patreon, my Teespring shop, and my Instagram if you're curious about that. I hope you've all had an absolutely wonderful day. Sláinte Skål.